where are we? You may find my
Yeah.
answer not what you expect. In the most straightforward terms, we are virtually at the end of the truth embargo. It's right in our hand, ready to take. You can smell it, you can taste it, you can see it. It's taken 78 years to get here. Um, a whole lot of people devoted their life to this, what I call an activist movement, though for most of the first, well, all the way through about early 1990s. So that's almost 50 years in, 45 years in. It was not so much an activist movement as it was a research, citizen research effort, uh, because the colleges and universities and professors and so forth were not going to study it. What studying was being done was under full classification, whether it was done within government facilities or whether it was contracted out to defense contractors or maybe even the odd academic program. It was all fully classified. And so there was just no research going on except what regular old citizens could do with whatever they could subtract out of their bank account and paycheck. This was a result of the truth embargo that was imposed right away after Roswell and formalized in 1952. So for the next 52 years, it was mostly a citizen science effort, noble. As you go back in the millennia and time, most science was citizen science. It was some smart guy's got a lab, right? And he's tinkering around with it. Maybe like it's 1642 or 1320. It was mostly citizen science, but of course that got formalized. And
but oh no, I just want to ask you Sorry, did you have more to say?
yeah,
You probably.
I'm not.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it was mostly a scientific effort to prove it. In other words, a lot of very intelligent but not necessarily connected individuals who are not working for the government, not working for a college university, were working very hard to prove essentially what was before our very eyes. The phenomena was going on all the time, in the sky, on the ground, and so forth. And we were told there's nothing to see. And Americans, or people rather, were going, oh, of course there is something to see. And they tried to prove it. This went on for some 52 years. However, at some point, I think people started to realize the fix is in. There's nothing we can say or do, no papers we can write, no studies we can put together that is going to get the government to acknowledge that there's something there. They're going to deny it all. They're not going to allow peer review. They're going to lie, misrepresent, because a full-ass truth embargo has been in place this entire time. There's no there. Why are you wasting your life? And if you don't get that message, we're going to embarrass you. We're going to demean you. We're going to stigmatize you. We're going to laugh at you. We're going to try to ruin your life without getting too aggressive. We're not a dictatorship. And hopefully that'll deter you. Didn't work. So that's the first 50 some years. Then in the early 1990s, an activist movement gets going. It gets going in a rather interesting way. I would call the beginning of the activist movement to end the policy of truth embargo, which is a national security policy. It begins when Lawrence Rockefeller goes again and confronts the Clinton administration and says, look, I will pay for outside studies and work and meetings and everything else to try to help you make the decision to get the United States government, the DOD, to release a huge trove of files and so forth that they have on this issue, which, if released, would essentially end the truth embargo. This effort lasted 3 years. It was serious. We know the people that were involved because we have the documents, thanks to Grant Canron confirming it all. I have 10 sets of them, 10 sets of those documents at the top of this bookshelf behind me. Those documents were put up online. They were provided to major newspapers. Nothing happened. But still, they were out, and they were part of the activist movement. That's about the most that came out of the Rockefeller Initiative that lasted 3 years. But what else came from it was that the people involved in it didn't let it go. For one, they were mad. They were treated rather poorly. And they're intelligent people that know how important it is. They didn't let it go. Number one of those individuals is John Podesta, whose then path through politics and so forth continued on without, because he wasn't an elected person, but so he's basically an advisor and he could advise anybody. So John Podesta carried forward what the remnants of the activist movement initiated by Rockefeller. The other person that carried forward was who came to become Senator Hillary Clinton, the wife of Bill Clinton, who also was aware of the issue. She was involved in the Rockefeller Initiative. And so she was carrying that thing forward, but far more behind the scenes than Podesta. Her husband was also carrying it forward to some degree, Leon Panetta, and the friend of Bill Clinton who brought this issue up. So there was kind of a carry forward from that initial activist effort. But most importantly, the Rockefeller Initiative, which went from 93 to 96, I entered the field in July of 1996, not even knowing it existed, set the stage for me to do my thing. I didn't know when I first got involved. I didn't know about the Rockefeller Initiative. I didn't know about Stephen Schiff's activities in the early 1990s. I did not know about Colonel Corso, but I quickly came to learn about them and realized that these are all very significant events that would be very useful in trying to produce an activist agenda and engage this issue as a lobbyist or as an activist. It was really what I was. And I met, of course, Grant Cameron. We started corresponding, and ultimately he provided me the 1,000-page copies of the 1,000-page documents confirming the Rockefeller Initiative. So that is the beginning of the activist movement, as I see it, regarding the truth embargo, from 1993 to the year 2000. Now, the other thing that took place in those early years that allowed this activist movement to flourish was I attribute to a gentleman by the name of Arthur Bell. Art Bell essentially wasn't the first, but he essentially created the most successful, most listened to radio show on UAP phenomena ever. And he made the very generous and fateful decision in 97 that while he had no interest in politics anymore, he'd already done that, been there, didn't like it. The politics of the UFO activism was righteous enough. And so I started getting invites to speak. That was significant because at that point, for the first time, as far as I know, an activist, not a researcher that, like, I've studied this sighting and I've talked to this witness, but rather an activist trying to pursue a political outcome, which I came to call the disclosure with a capital D, formal confirmation of ET presence by the president, had an audience the size of 6, 7, 8 million. That simply had not been the case. And so suddenly 6, 7, 8 million people are hearing a different song. It's not, oh, here's another sighting. Here's another thing I just learned. Here's something, here's a report from somebody. No. Here is the case for why the United States government has known about the extraterrestrial presence, at least by July of 1947. Here is the case that they established a policy, which I eventually came to call the truth embargo around 2001, that is still in place today. It is a national security policy. And here is the case why that policy of embargo has got to be overcome, because it is no longer in the interest of the United States government. And so that is started taking place, getting it together between 93 and the year 2000. And then we move into the 21st century. Now, 25 more years have gone by. It shouldn't have taken that long, but it did. And I'm not going to complain, because other activist movements of great importance have taken longer than this. And after 25 years, we are enormous amount of work. Just historians will described it. The amount of citizen science, activists, journalists, and research and so forth that has taken place will fill volumes, right? While the academic world sat utterly silent on the side, doing nothing, absolutely in full cowardice. All right. That will be significant. And we finally reached the point we were there. But here is where it gets tricky. And here is the answer to where are we now? Where are we now is that by coincidence, mostly, though there is a connection, we have arrived at the point where disclosure by the President of the United States could happen like that. But that point happens to coincide with, and I've been around for 78 years, and I've seen a whole lot of political upheaval, a lot of protest, a lot of violence, cities burning. I've seen the anger. I've seen marches on Washington. I've seen a lot of them. But I have never seen what is going on now in the United States. We are in the middle of a level of disruption, confusion, disinformation, division, hyperpartisanship, unlike anything I have seen in my lifetime. And so at the same time, we're trying to end this embargo and move into another, what we'll call paradigm. We're trying to do it in the middle of this utter era of disruption, which we're struggling to even define how broad, how big, how deep it is, and how awful things are going to get. And that just basically a coincidence, but not completely. And here is the connection that needs to be discussed. One of the reasons we are where we are now is because of the collapse of the social contract of the United States government. I need to turn that off one moment. Okay. United States government. Now, what do I mean by that? Every country, every kingdom, every empire, every society, going back as many thousands of years that you want to go, all had a social contract. It is a contract between the people of that civilization, country, empire, and the ruling authority, ruling class, whatever you want to call it. And it is the, how would you say, conduct of that social contract, the effectiveness of it, and so forth, that determines whether that society is going to thrive, is going to be destructive, constructive, collapse, or what have you. It determines the fate of that society. And as it happens, democracies and countries that are, there's degrees of democracy. They come in a number of forms, but overall, we know what a democracy is, right? And they go all the way back to the times of Greece and perhaps even earlier. Democracies have their own type of social contract, which is not the same as the social contract in extreme dictatorships, empires, and so forth. And the fundamental basis of the social contract that makes democracies work is the level of trust, not fear, not abject terror, is the level of trust that the citizens of that society, that country, have in the ruling authorities, which in the case of democracies, they have a substantial role in electing, assigning, or creating, okay? Trust level. That is the key. And if that trust level drops below a certain level, a certain threshold, the social contract will be strained to the breaking point until, in fact, it breaks. And when it breaks, nothing good happens. The democracies in question will collapse. They will go into evolution. They will go into economic destruction, and in many cases, literally disappear from the face of the earth. And it is my um, unfortunate and unpleasant task to state to you today that I believe our social contract, if it is not broken, it is practically broken, which means that we are on the edge of a level of unrest, destruction, like we have never seen in this country. Okay, now, remember I said something about the fact that trust is the essential component of the social contract in democracies? We are here because trust in government by the American people has dropped below the threshold. It has gone to a place I don't think it's ever been. And it's been in some pretty dark places. All right. In other words, trust in government has collapsed, which means that nobody knows what's true or false anymore. And since they don't know what's true or false, they don't know what to believe. And so they will believe what anybody can convince them to believe by whatever means, bribery, chicanery, eloquence, whatever the hell, but whatever they convince them to believe, it doesn't even matter whether it's true or not. And as a result, because the world runs on some very strict laws of physics, which are immutable and will not change no matter what bullshit is put forward or what anything people believe, those rules are immutable. When you can no longer believe what's going on, things don't work, things don't happen, bad things take place, and so forth. And that is where we are. And the connection to the ET issue is simple. Probably no single thing, and there have been many, many candidates for this, has done more to undermine the trust in the United States government by the American people without getting to other countries, because this is happening elsewhere, than the fact that the United States government has maintained a complete and total lie for 78 years about an incredibly important matter, the evidence of which is transparent to everybody living on this earth. The phenomena is in the air, it is on the ground, it is being reported, it is being seen, it has been studied, it has been outed, it is everywhere. So when the government says it's not true, that's not a lie where somebody says to you, I really wasn't there that day, and you have no way of knowing one way or the other. No, it is basically saying the emperor has new clothes. You can't believe your own eyes. And it is a lie, not of a singular nature, but in order to maintain the truth embargo, the United States government has had to lie to every single citizen of this country 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 4 weeks a month, 12 months a year, for 78 years without let up. And so as the evidence is mounted, as the knowledge bases increase, the impact of that lie on the social contract has increased to extraordinary level. And it didn't help that this ongoing perpetual lie was being augmented by the odd major lie, destructive lie, that would occur from time to time. The lies that got us into Vietnam and kept us there, not helping. The lies that got us into Afghanistan, in Iraq, and kept us there with thousands of hundreds of thousands dying, didn't help. The lies about our economic system and other things haven't helped, right? But those were somewhat defined in time. They were made and they were done. The Vietnam War ended, we moved on. But they didn't help the fact that you had this ongoing 78-year lie. And so in that sense, the truth embargo itself has helped erode the confidence and trust in our government to the point where the social contract is about to break. And if it breaks, the consequences are almost incalculable. Not to mention riots, destruction, death, breakdown in the economy in the United States. But the risk of nuclear war, already at unprecedented levels, will go even further. And we may very well have that nuclear war. In other words, hell on earth, apocalypse, all of these hells on earth and apocalypse that we're practically addicted to. We doom scroll them. There are series about this that go on 20, 30, 40, 5 years of episodes, movie after movie after movie, representing a apocalyptic world. And the reason they make them and the reason we just have to watch them is because down inside, at the center of our psyche, is a certainty that that is exactly what is coming. That's where we are at this point when disclosure is virtually in the palm of our hand. So, with that in mind, let me tell you what is happening, what our options are. Let's give you the good news first. Despite the fact that, again, we're having this enormous disruption and political chaos, it is the fact that since that chaos began in earnest, approximately 10 years ago, the disclosure process has never backed up. It has moved forward consistently year after year with one remarkable and sometimes unprecedented development after another, meaning that it has crossed the Rubicon and headed for Rome, and ultimately will get there unless the Huns come in and burn Rome to the ground first. So, and that's the good news. And the list of things that have happened is extraordinary. Now, I am in the process of putting a comprehensive list together that shows these developments over the last years, going back to 17, as tightly as I can. And I'm going to be putting that out very soon in a number of ways in order to help people get a sense of how much progress we have made. And it is extraordinary, the things that have happened, all right? And that is the good news. In response to these developments, one of the consequences was that enough serious people in the academic world, in the political world, in the military world, have not only come to fully acknowledge to themselves that this phenomena is real and we have a non-human presence, but they have seen the stigma fall away, and they're now taking concerted public actions to what? To literally prepare for the post-disclosure world if we can get there. Something was simply not possible 40, 30, 20 years ago. Now, what am I talking about? The Soul Foundation, which is set up at Stanford, run, well, essentially chaired by, I believe, Gary Nolan, a Nobel Prize nominee physicist, an extraordinary and fine man. The Soul Foundation has, I believe, raised a lot of money, possibly millions, and intends to raise millions more. Why? Just to be another science foundation? No. It has been created specifically to bring together the scientific resources that it can lure with funding and programs to specifically address the post-disclosure world, the world after we get confirmation from the President of the United States. In other words, they're not intimidated. They're not embarrassed. They're actually very, very forthright about it. The scientific issues and questions that we will be looking at, the opportunities available post-disclosure, are almost too many to list. And they're getting ready to deal with it, right? The Soul Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit that I hope will raise millions of dollars anticipating the post-disclosure world. And then you have the UAP Disclosure Fund. The UAP Disclosure Fund, which I believe is out of the Bay Area, is composed of a lot of very substantial people with a lot of substantial money. It is a 501c4 political entity, all right? Not a lobbying firm, but a political entity. Why? It is going to raise millions of dollars to what? Get disclosure? No. Millions of dollars to impact and influence the political decisions that are going to have to be made post-disclosure, right? And that has happened. The New Paradigm Institute, which has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, but needs to raise millions more. Chaired essentially by Danny Sheehan with a substantial board based out of the West Coast and the Romero Institute. It was created primarily to address the post-disclosure world, though it does have programs that are helping to facilitate getting there, and has been active in the disclosure process, which is what Paradigm Research Group has been devoted to almost exclusively. And so it's kind of both. But ultimately, if you read its mandate, if you go and go through the website, you can see that it is clearly preparing itself to deal with the long list of needs and opportunities after we get confirmation. It's not the only one, right? There are conferences being created that clearly are not about getting disclosure. They are about what to do after disclosure. And we're seeing that. All right. And so this is very significant. And obviously, they're looking for support, and they need people's support better than ever. We're this close. And so all of the hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars that the very wealthy people in this country have had the great opportunity to build in wealth in our capitalistic system, of which billions and billions have been donated to any number of causes, because American capitalism is pretty generous, not all, but pretty generous. And these funds go to help improve the social situation, right? And help the common good, right? But virtually none of them have gone to this issue. None have gone to this issue, with a few exceptions. Now, that's starting to change. But what we need now is for these very wealthy philanthropists who have benefited from American capitalistic system and freedoms that we have here to start donating large sums of money to the organizations that are going to address the post-disclosure world, if they care about whether that world is going to serve the common good, or whether it's simply going to serve the elite who want to remake the post-disclosure world to look exactly like the pre-disclosure world, which would completely negate the power of this paradigm shift and leave us exactly where we are. And so there are efforts underway to try to make the case to these very fine, generous people: we need your support now more than ever. All right. As far as Paradigm Research Group is concerned, knowing that the post-disclosure world was very close, I had to make changes very quickly, and so I did. A few months ago, I repositioned Paradigm Research Group as a 501c nonprofit, not to be a just activist entity seeking disclosure, but to prepare to be a post-disclosure entity dealing with the post-disclosure issues much more in the manner of a think tank. And so I also need to raise money, but not at the level of these other organizations. I am small, fast on my feet. I have a lot of potential volunteers available to work. And so I'm trying to raise $25,000, $30,000, $50,000 in which Paradigm Research's plane can hit V1, rotate, get in the air, and start doing some interesting things. Right? So that's what I'm trying to do. Meanwhile, I'm trying to keep up with all the other developments that are taking place, which are happening too fast to follow. All right. The amount of media coverage is off the charts. Since 2017, I have logged in 7,000 mainstream pro-journalistic articles on this issue. And that's not all of them, but it's about the best I can handle. 7,000 articles. There have been dozens of documentaries, right? There have been major developments politically, including 8 hearings in Congress, prior to which there had only been 2 going back to 1968. There have been 4 major pieces of legislation, one of which was an omnibus bill that covered it all. It was cut back in half, the UAP Disclosure Act, then resubmitted in full the next year, but withdrawn under political pressure, and is about to be resubmitted again. All right. You've had 2 major hearings under the House Subcommittee of Oversight that have had significant witnesses in front of them. A task force on declassifying federal secrets was just put together with both Republican and Democratic members, which states that its mandate is to finally bring out the sequestered files and held back on the MLK, RFK, and JFK assassination, records such as the files, the client files of Jeffrey Epstein, which is kind of something that people are irritated hasn't come out, and also the UFO files, the same ones that Rockefeller approached the Clinton administration in 1993 to try to get out, but really had no chance because the DOD was not going to help them at all. Only this is different. This is a task force of a major House committee that has subpoena power, and they're already submitting demand letters. This is just a taste of what is going on and has been going on in just the last few years. All right. And then the most recent development is very significant. Why? Over the last 70 years, just regular people with very little money and some skills have created hundreds of documentaries engaging this issue. Without getting to whether they were good or bad or whatever, they were documentaries. They were trying to get information out. As the years went by, they got a little better at their skills. The equipment got cheaper and they kept making them. All right. And those documentaries help to educate people around the world. At the same time, the mega filmmakers with the massive money, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 200 millions to make films, made 600 fictional films, science fictional films that had extraterrestrials in them of every type and form. And those were seen all around the world, educating the public. But they would not make documentaries on this subject. Not only that, they would not allow any documentaries made elsewhere to ever get up on the big screens in those big theaters with the great sound, the IMAX and all of that stuff. No, not a single one was ever allowed that privilege. Why? Because the film industry, which I admire, most important, profound art form in history, the film industry was making a fortune and saw no reason why they should poke the bear by putting quality documentary films up on those giant screens, giving the issue huge gravitas and making stars out of the director, the creators and the writers of those docs. This was a trade-off. I'm not going to be too critical of that. I get the trade-off. I understand. So, well, those films would be seen elsewhere. Eventually, they got to stream a little bit and got a little more exposure. You had platforms like UFO TV, Gaia, and MUFON TV that was creating these platforms where they were all listed outside of that big arena. Well, Paradigm Research Group joined with Dan Harari in Hollywood specifically to start breaking the glass. In other words, we created the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org, specifically to bring these two worlds together to start getting content that's got $1, $2, $5, $10 million behind it and gets the kind of exposure it deserves. It's already up to 200 members. Deals are being done. It's been helpful. However, aside from that, something was going on which I did not know about. And that is a gentleman who had been involved in some of these citizen efforts to try to create docs, a gentleman with substantial Hollywood credentials and connections, was making the ultimate film, a film that I wanted to make and a lot of the people wanted to make. He spent millions of dollars. It took 2.5 years, and it was announced just a short while ago. And that film is called The Age of Disclosure. And I am just vain enough to think that the disclosure in that name may be capital D disclosure, which is what I came to call the end of the truth embargo. Capital D, proper noun and event, the formal confirmation of this extraterrestrial presence by the heads of state of nations. The Age of Disclosure was announced recently as heading towards a premiere. It premiered at the South by Southwest Film Festival in Austin, Texas on the 7th. It was well received. The write-ups are already coming down. The reviews are good. It was written up extensively in the Hollywood Reporter and Variety it is going to get a huge amount of press. More importantly, it has the best chance of getting full-assed 2,000 screen distribution in the theaters in this country and even overseas than any documentary ever produced. I think it will get that big film distribution. It will be also aired in other areas, including Los Angeles. This film is not just any documentary. It is a milestone event, the most powerful representation of this issue as a, how would you say, embargoed reality. It includes nothing but high-level inside individuals who have already spoken out, but have been brought together to create a powerful presentation in a highly financed entity with high production values. I have not seen it yet, but you bet I will. This just happened, all right? Once that film starts getting more and more exposure, particularly if it gets big screen resolution, it is a representation. It is going to provide a huge asset to the political entities on the Hill, which have been pushing this issue, and the politicians that have stood up in a nonpartisan way to back the end of this truth embargo, meaning people like Representative Tim Burchett, Congresswoman Kirsten Gillibrand, Representative Nancy Mace, Senator Mark Warner, right? Senator Reid, Senator Chuck Schumer, Representative Markowitz, Representative Luna, and others, one after another. And are they losing votes? Are they being shamed? No, they are not, right? They are at the point of the spear of this. But this political process that they are engaging and pursuing is, as I pointed out, being conducted in a Force 5 political hurricane, which makes it a lot more difficult. And yet it is happening. And so this is the best way I can describe where we are 78 years after Roswell, trying to end the biggest lie in human history and bring about the biggest paradigm shift in human history, which is the formal confirmation that we are not alone in this galaxy, that we have visitors. They are almost certainly from other star systems. And we need to completely reassess who we are, what we want, every single social contract of every single country on this planet, all of our global representations, all of our treaties, and all of our behavior. And we need to do it as quickly as possible, or we are going to destroy this planet and the people on it. And we will live with that disgrace as long as we live, which will not be all that long. That's my response as to where we are right now.
Thank you, Steve. It has a lot of weight to it, and one of the things that may save us is the bipartisan efforts that are in place in Congress. That may save us from the collapse that you kind of suggested may happen.
This bipartisan nature is its one most significant quality, and it is credit to all of the politicians who have openly engaged this issue in very material ways and are on opposite ends of the spectrum and frankly might cut each other's throat if they got alone in the same room, that all of them, without exception, have acknowledged the nonpartisan aspect of this. They respect it. Yeah. They have to respect it because it's that big and that important. Well, and as long as they can maintain that nonpartisan posture, no matter what comes, we still have a chance. But it's going to get harder and harder as the unfolding political developments start to create really painful outcomes that are going to prompt people to do very unpleasant things, which is the nature of what happens when social contracts break.
Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean? Do some unpleasant things?
Riots.
Oh, you mean like
burning down neighborhoods, assassination attempts, threats, swatting, abuse, uncivil discourse.
You mean
breakdown in city politics, breakdown in the education system, right? Okay. Further increase in suicides, which are going untold levels, increase in uses of opiates, overdose deaths. Can I go on? That's just a taste of what a breakdown in the social contract would mean.
I get it. Okay, let's look a little bit to the post-disclosure world, or that transition. What do we do with the people who have kept the secrets, who have threatened people, maybe even killed people? Do we give them amnesty, or do we hold them accountable for the big lie?
First of all, we shower praise and appreciation on every single person, both in government, in science, and in our wonderful citizen science activist world, with as much praise and acknowledgement and appreciation as possible. We start funding the people that are kind to deal with this post-disclosure world, okay, and recognize that there's a lot of good causes out there and a tremendous amount of need, all right, and whether it's food programs or international system, whatever, there's countless issues. But recognize that resolving this truth embargo, ending this lie, right, and immediately going after the number one most important issue that the human race faces, it's not global warming, which is an issue, okay? It is the nuclear arms race and the 15,000 nuclear weapons that are currently in existence and are ready to be launched. And once that happens, almost nothing else matters. We've got to go after that. And that means funding the post-disclosure entities, because those post-disclosure entities are going to be leading the worldview change. They're going to be in the front of the paradigm shift that makes it possible for the re-examination and reconsideration of all of the factors that have created this nuclear arms race, created these nuclear weapons, maintain these nuclear weapons, continuing to the spread of these nuclear weapons, and ultimately leading to the use of these weapons.
Right.
So that is what is essential, right? Post-disclosure. And all I can say is, I hope we pull it off. Did I miss it?
You know, let me ask you this. You were saying that there's a lot of partisanship, and there's a lot of division, chaos in government, right? And I'm wondering right now just how everything has ramped up since the disclosure of the UFO UAPs in the last few years. All this chaos has ramped up quite substantially. Could this be in alignment with the fact that if there wasn't so much chaos and people weren't so consumed in what is going on in the division, then people would be giving more they would be giving more time to the fact that this information is out there, that there's UFO crash retrieval teams. So I'm wondering if maybe the confusion is to distract us from actually looking at this situation.
No, I assure you, history doesn't operate that way.
Well,
history is a massive tide of events moving forward, and you can't really stop it. You just try to go with it and don't drown. No, this is a coincidence. We had many opportunities for disclosure. Believe me, we had a great opportunity in 1947. We had another one in 1952. We had another one in 1969 if they had fought back against the efforts to shut down Blue Book. We had another one in the early 1990s. We've had many chances. Both parties have had their chances. And so, no, the erosion of the social contract in the United States is not the result. Let me put it this way. It is the result of a huge number of mistakes, bad policies, and so forth, and just human nature that has hit a kind of critical point simultaneous with this. It is a synchronicity, a coincidence, except for one connection, as I pointed out. There is no question that the truth embargo, right, by the government, maintaining that lie in all of the stupid shit they had to say, all of the embarrassing things they had to do, all of the lies, all of the misrepresentations, which included intimidation and a few people being killed, but I'm sure it wasn't that big a deal. And we can easily provide amnesty for that. It's not a big deal. And we will provide amnesty, right? And truth and reconciliation. That has contributed to this, right? You can't separate them. Right. But am I going to then blame?
We're tired of being lied to. We are tired of the lies, and maybe that's what's happening now. We need a massive change.